Sunday morning, the 20th of May, 1979. I'm with Mr. Aaron Ngalande once again in the government rest house at Kasempa, and we are trying to pick up a few questions that we missed in our interview last November, I believe.
Yes.
So one question I did not ask you, Mr. Ngalande, we did not complete was a little bit about your father. After you started into school, I didn't ask you a little more about his biography. If you could make a few comments along how long he went on teaching, then when he stopped teaching and went on preaching, and then when he finally passed away. If you could make a few comments more about your father in his later years, or middle years.
Yes. Yes, my father was both what you might call a teacher and a preacher for some time. But up to about 1934, when we started getting qualified teachers, then he stopped. And then because that time the government expected people who were teaching to have some kind of qualification, teaching qualifications. But since my father didn't have any, together with Mr. Ezekiel Msompo, so they stopped teaching. My father and Mr. Msompo just continued preaching. And they were at Impala village, and they went to Kabemba village, where he stayed for a long time. And at that time, the school was handed over properly to the missions, and they were qualified teachers. Mm-hmm. So my father could not continue teaching. Mm-hmm. This was about 1934. And that time, 1935, I myself came to the boarding school at Mukinge. Mm-hmm. And my father just continued preaching at Kabemba village.
Mm-hmm. Did he and Mr. Masompo move together? Were they preaching together? Or?
For some time they preached together, or sometimes they could split up. Mm-hmm. I remember they used to make almost an annual tour covering Kizera, this area, Chief Kizera's area, and then Chief Mnyambara was also a chief before his chieftainship was abolished. They used to move together to preach in those two areas for about a month. Mm-hmm. I do remember them coming back, telling us stories how the type of people they had met, because in that area you have, in Chief Kizera's area, you have some Ruvare, Luchazi, and Chokwe, and even in Bunda speaking people. Mm-hmm. So in their travels, while they went about preaching, they came across villages where the main language was either Ruvare or Luchazi or Bunda. So they were trying to learn to speak those languages also in order to communicate with the people.
Yes.
So I remember such a tours took them about a month, because it's some distance, it covers up, they had a boundary up to Kabompo River. I think they had boundaries with before Kabompo district was formed. It was Varuvare district. Mm-hmm. And the boundary was Kabompo River. Mm-hmm. So they used to go and preach. That area was under their jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. They used to go and preach up to Kabompo River.
They would both go?
They could both go because it was a long tour. Mm-hmm. But ordinarily when they were preaching locally, they used to go separate. Mm-hmm. One would go one side and the other one would go the other way.
Yes. Well, now, where did your father retire to? Was it Kabemba village?
Yeah, no, he actually died. He died while he was still preaching in 1951.
In 51?
He died on the 30th of December in 1951.
Now,
he died in King Hospital.
Did your mother pass on before your father? Or?
No, he was the first. My father died before my mother.
And your mother lived on till?
My mother lived on until 1960. That was 61. No, 63. 63, because I remember I was back from Britain then.
Yes. I see. Well, now, is there anything else about your father that you think you would be interested in regarding education?
No, I don't think there is. The only thing is he was very much interested. He was so much interested in education that he made sure that there was a school at Kabemba village where he was based. Excuse me.
Yes.
Where he was based. So, and he was encouraging all the children to come to school. And he more or less helped the teachers to run the school, because in those days, I remember I mentioned that it was not easy to get the children to come to school in those days. You had to look for the children. So he sort of supervised the school to make sure the children there was good attendance at the school to help the teachers. This much he did very well, and he was very much interested.
Well, is it true then Kabemba village sort of is one of the oldest schools in this district?
Yes.
Yes,
it is true. It is Kabemba village is one of the oldest.
What do they call the school in that area now? Is it still called?
It is called Musonweji.
Musonweji,
Yes. But since that time, it has been off and on because of the population has shifted.
Nice.
And there being nobody to urge the people to work together. So after my father died, the school more or less stopped. I think it moved elsewhere until very recently. There was no school, but recently again the school was re-established because there's been a fair amount of population which has come back to that area.
Now, how is Washington Ngalande your oldest son, right?
No, he is my second oldest.
He's your second?
Yes. The first is Dodson Ngalande.
I see.
He's a teacher.
He's a teacher.
Yes.
Well, now, by the time, let's say Washington went Solwezi, how old would he have been when his grandfather passed on? Would he have been very old? Maybe I should ask him.
No. Yes, not very old. I think that's the year he was born. Washington was born in 1950.
Oh, I see.
I remember I had just returned from Jalimbana.
So
he was only very few.
Very young.
Very young. He was just a baby.
Yes.
When my father died.
I see. So he's the third generation of you to
be
educated, yes.
Yes.
Right. Now, the next question, Mr. Ngalande, that I'd like to ask you relates to the Kafumakachis. You've mentioned several Kafumakachis. I'd like to know if they are related, and if you can sort of give me a little bit about how
we are related. Yes.
Yes.
The Kafumukachis are also quite a big family around Kasempa here. Their father was Headman Kipemba. But his personal name was Kafumukachi. Now Headman Kipemba had a lot of children. Where the eldest, I think, was the late Costa Kafumukache. And then we had the late White Kafumukache. Then we have Botman Kafumukache. Then we have Carpenter Kafumukache. Then we have Samuel Kafumukache. Now it happened that the village was near Mukinge Mission. Therefore, they had also, like ourselves, they had a privilege of attending school at Mukinge. So all of them, except the old Costa Kafumukache, he didn't have enough formal education because he was old enough and he had already started working in the mines. But the rest had access to Mukinge school. So we went to school together with them. So that White Kafumukache qualified as a teacher. We even went together to Charimbana with him. And Botman Kafumukache also qualified as a teacher. And Carpenter Kafumukache also qualified as a teacher. But Samuel was still very small. So he was in the lower primary classes. So, but Samuel came to attend the school at Mutanda. I taught him at Mutanda, Samuel Kafumukache. Where he graduated and went to Munari for his secondary education.
Did they not have a sister? I thought there was a...
Yes, they had, these are the boys, but they had two sisters. In fact, they are still there. Mrs. Impanga, and now the other girl, I've forgotten her name, Mrs. Who is that? He's married to one of the boys I know, Maxwell Mutambarika. Yes, Mrs. Mutambarika. So, as far as I know, they were those two sisters. So they were quite a big family too.
Yes.
So we were connected in that Carpenter Kafumukache got married to Jane, my sister.
I see.
Yes, that's how the connection came.
I see.
So Carpenter Kafumukache got married to my sister Jane.
Yes.
So that all the Kafumukaches now became our brothers-in-law and sisters-in-law.
I see. Well, now, where did they get the name Kafumukache? Is this from the mother?
You know, from the father. The father was Kafumukache.
He was Kafumukache?
Yes, that was his personal name. But his title as a headman is Headman Kipemba.
I see, Headman Kipemba.
Kipemba, yes.
Now, was he very keen on education? Why did all of his children go to school? We know why you and your brothers went to school. Was it the same in his case? As the father?
Yes, I think I should think Mr. Kafumukache was the senior, was very keen, because I think he had also traveled a lot. He might have traveled a lot on the line of rail. So when he settled near the mission in this area, he made sure that his children went to school.
Fine. I think the next question I'd like to ask you, Mr. Ngalande, is regarding uniforms. I think you mentioned you're going to say something about the uniforms that when you were at Kasempa, being a very simple uniform, if you could say something. And then when you were teaching at Mutanda, what kind of uniform you had there? And was there any controversy involved that you can recall?
Yes, it was a practice in all boarding schools in those days that all children or pupils, because many of them were quite old men, they had some kind of uniform. I remember during my days at Mukinge, we had a pair of khaki shorts and well, I don't know if you can call it a shirt. It was a piece of calico which was tailored by Mrs. Foster into a sort of shirt which was white. So we had a white shirt and a pair of khaki shorts. So that carried on until, and the girls, I believe, also had a dress each. So at Mutanda, when we went to Mutanda, we also continued to provide the boys with a uniform. Only that we arranged that they should have a more superior type of uniform, a khaki shirt, a proper khaki shirt, and a pair of shorts. This was very good. Well, I don't think there was any controversy that I remember of. We tried to make the uniform as attractive as possible. I remember we had, because we had the 3 separate compounds where the boys lived and they looked after themselves. We had a compound captain in each compound, and Peter Letchford and I arranged that we should have stripes, like in the army. So the compound captain had 3 stripes to distinguish him among his friends. And the house captain, we had a captain for each house, and the house captain had 2 stripes on his left shoulder. And the assistant, the house captain, had 1 stripe. So this encouraged the boys to keep discipline in the compounds. So that the teachers did very little to keep the discipline. The boys, with such uniforms and decorations, kept the firm discipline.
Well, now, was this an influence of your Boy Scouts interest?
Yes, yes.
It sounds like Mr. Ngalande.
Yes, we had. Oh no, it worked out very well. Yes.
Right. Well, now, did you try, or Mr. Litchwood try in those days to introduce any kind of uniform in the out schools at all? Or they just no uniform?
No, not in the out schools. Not like we have today. Today you find even in out schools the children have uniforms. In those days it wasn't easy. By the way, they had to pay a fee for that. in order to get a uniform, they had to pay a sort of fees. We had, how much were the boys paying? I remember myself, I used to pay 5 shillings at Mukinge. When we went to Mutanda, the boys were paying 15 shillings, which is the equivalent of 1 kwacha 15 way today, for the whole year. But the government provided grants for feeding the children. So they had to pay a fee of 15 shillings in order to get that uniform. Yes. Whereas in the village schools, they couldn't afford that.
Yes, yes. Well, now, the other next question I wanted to ask is a broader question. What about the introduction of the gene schools and the supervisors in Kasempa and Solwezi districts? And was there any relationship? Did you have anything to do with them? Was there any relationship with Mutanda? What do you recall about them and their importance? Were they successful, failure, etc.? What just can you remember in general about
Unfortunately, we didn't have much to do with the gene supervisors here in this district, in Kasempa or Solwezi. We had the idea of a gene supervisor was that after he had been trained at Chalimbana, he would go back to his area and become a sort of local inspector of schools. And in those days, inspection of schools didn't only entail classroom work. It also entailed inspecting houses of the teachers and even of the villagers, going around the villages, sort of a health inspector. This is what they did. This was one of their jobs. Unfortunately, in Kasempa, we didn't have one gene supervisor based here. Mr. Mankinka, who was sent to go and take the course. I think after his course, he was posted elsewhere. He wasn't posted back in Kasempa. But I do remember Mr. Brasho Lewira, the late Brasho Lewira, was sent back to Solwezi. And I think he worked only for a few years and then he resigned. He went into business on his own. So that we actually didn't have much benefit of the gene supervisors in our schools. But the idea was they should have been going around, helping the teachers, helping the parents, encouraging parents to send children to school. You remember, I keep going back to that one because that was a big problem. Because I remember even the native authorities, particularly employed Capasos to go around recruiting children to come to school or to check on children who didn't attend school. They went to the parents, and if there wasn't any good excuse, the parents were fined a certain amount. I think it was 2, 6 or 5 shillings for their children failing to come to school. And the native authorities employed the pastors particularly for that job, sort of local messengers. So that the gene supervisor, one of the jobs of the gene supervisor was to discuss with parents, to meet the parents, to encourage them to send their children to school. I think this was the main course because when I did my HTC, we were having the courses together.
So when you were at Matanda, there wasn't much interrelationship with the supervisor?
No, because the boys came themselves from as far as Mwinirunga, Wampa, Kafurafuta. They came on their own and they were in the boarding, so we took direct responsibility.
Right. Well, I think that clarifies that very clearly to me. I had a few blank spots in my mind about the gene schools in this area. I'd spoken to Mr. Mandela about Zambezi, where he'd been involved, but I was a bit confused in this area what had happened.
Yes, Mr. Mandela was one of the genes, that is John Mandela.
Yes,
supervisor
John
himself.
Mandela, yes.
So this was the job they were trying to do.
Yes. So you've helped me a lot on that point. Now, is there anything you'd like to say about your own bibliography? Maybe just a few words I think you wanted to say about your after your work in the Scouts, you wanted to say a few words about the police reserve, very briefly.
Yes.
It's not really on education, but just to complete your bibliography, or anything else you'd like to add about yourself that
Yes.
would be interesting.
Oh yes, I had a lot of interest in the Scouts, and I think I did my bit. I think I mentioned in our first interview that I established quite a good Scout troop at Mutanda.
Yes.
And when I transferred from Mutanda to the southern province, to Livingstone, I found that at that time the government was asking for people, volunteers, to join the police reserve, which had just been established. Northern Region Police Reserve then it was. This is people would go and work as policemen in their own spare time, not a full-time policemen, but part-time. But they provided the uniforms, the same uniform as the regular police. So I was interested. I applied. I remember the officer in charge in those days, the commanding officer, was Mr. Monteith, a certain Mr. Monteith. He had, he looked very fierce, and he had a long mustache. The army type, He was, I think, assistant superintendent. And in those days, all the high ranks, no African would go above, I think sub-inspector was the highest rank an African police officer could go. So the officer in charge at that time was a European, an expatriate. This was 1952 when I went to Livingstone. So I applied and I was accepted and I was tested. I joined the police reserve as a constable. Yes, so I stayed. We used to do some very interesting exercises. And during that time, the police training college was still in Livingstone. So we had the benefit of the instructors who were instructing the regular police to come and instruct us as well. I think we met it once a week. I think it was every Wednesday after 4. We could go to the parade ground. We could have an instructor from we used to call it the police training depot in those days. It wasn't a training college like we have at Iliraya now. It was a police training depot. We were given a khaki shorts, khaki tunic, and some boots and patties, black patties. For the first time, it was very cumbersome. Yes. But as we went on, we learned how to clean them and how to put them on and to walk with them. So I continued for about 2 years. I was promoted to be a sergeant. So I got my 3 stripes.
Yes.
So I became a sergeant, and we used to go out on duties. We used to have some very interesting duties, sometimes night duties when we had a lot of cases of burglary, or police reservists were called out. We worked along with the regulars. We used to go out patrolling at night. Sometimes we made some arrests. And there was one thing that was prevalent in Livingstone at that time. There was a lot of illicit beer brewing. People could brew beer illegally and start selling all around the Livingstone. And at weekends, sometimes we were called out, the reserves were called out to help the regulars to go and disperse people from those drinking places.
I see.
Yes, and they take away the tins. You take the tins away, pour the beer, and take all the tins so that they wouldn't brew anymore. But surprising enough, we found a few hours after that, you've been there, you find there are still plenty of tins. So I worked with the police reserve while in Livingstone, and I was also again promoted as a sub-inspector. So I had 2 blue bars on my shoulder.
I see.
And all the gadgets that go with it. So I did fairly well. And when I transferred from Livingstone to Mazabuka, I continued working with the police reserve. And then later on, when I transferred to Kabwe, this was after independence. Now I got promoted as an inspector. And well, we did some very good job sometimes in the course of our duties. And then when I was in Indora, just before I retired, I got promoted as assistant superintendent, the rank which I still hold.
That would have been what year then?
Yes.
What year would that have been?
I'm still assistant
Oh,
superintendent.
you're still
Yes.
assistant superintendent, I see.
Reserve assistant superintendent.
Yes.
But this time I'm not very active because in the police reserve here in Kasempa there's nobody with such a rank. And even the regular police commanding officer is just an inspector.
I see. Right. Well, now, Mr. Ngalande, that's all I think I want to ask you in additional to what we've discussed at great length before. Is there anything else we get after going over your the script, the transcript that you can think of you'd like to add with regard to education in the Northwest Province? Is there anything you thought of?
No, I don't think I have anything except that I would like. We've got a problem in this, especially in Kasempa, and I think in Solwezi as well. Excuse me. We have, because the government policy, the Zambia government policy, the party and the government, say that each district should be self-contained as far as secondary school is concerned. They should have a complete secondary school, a full secondary school, from Form 1 to Form 5, boys and girls. Now, we have had a problem in this district, and it's always as well. We have a girls' secondary school here at Mukinge run by the missions. And in Solwezi, they have a boys' secondary school run by the government. So that the girls in Solwezi are at a disadvantage. They've got to go out of the district to find the places. So in the same way, the boys in Kasempa district have to go out of the district to go and look for places, secondary school places. So this has caused a lot of concern to the parents. For instance, the boys from here have either to go to Solwezi, if they can get in, Mwenelunga, Zambezi, and Kabompo. And many of the parents, should say, are not well off enough financially to find fares for their children. Say for Mwenelunga, it's a long way. The boy has got to go to Solwezi, and then from there catch a bus to Mwenelunga. Apart from the inconvenience of traveling long distances by small children, the fares, the parents have always to find fare, money for fare. So this is, well, we were lucky when His Excellency the President last visited Kasempa. He definitely gave instructions that Kasempa should have a boys' secondary school. And that was agreed. Up to now, it's about 2 or 3 years ago now, nothing has taken place. It was supposed to be built last year, but in the second National Development Plan, but unfortunately there were no funds. We're hoping that in this third National Development Plan, there will be funds available to open up a boys' secondary school at Kasempa. This is one of the problems we have, because our boys, the parents feel that our boys here, why should they travel so long distances when the others, the rest of the children in the country, just go short distances to get to a secondary school. Some even attend as day pupils. So I think this is one problem. I think Solwezi also has the same problem with the girls. Here we have the boys. Well, here we are lucky. We have got a very good girls' secondary school, and many girls from Solwezi and Kabompo, they come here, and some even from as far as the Copper Belt. They prefer to send their children, their daughters here. But we have a problem of sending our boys a very long distance. Yes, I think this is as far as the primary schools are concerned, I think we are quite well off. So that this leads me to another problem of selection of pupils from grade 7 into Form 1. Some parents here feel that many of our children are left out because we have no secondary school here for boys. That's what they feel. If we had our secondary school in this district for boys, we could, I think many more could have found places. But since our district has no places for boys, we find very few are selected to go for Form 1. Now, this is another problem we are facing. And many people are of the opinion that probably there are a lot of mistakes in the form of selection. Many people are very dissatisfied with the system of selecting pupils from grade 7 to Form 1. And many are blaming it on the computer. They think the computer is causing a lot of, is making a lot of mistakes. You find some children who should not be selected are selected, and those who should have been selected are left out. Well, we don't know. But there is an instance, why we say so is there is a case of a boy who had left school about 2 years before. But his name came up on the computer and he was selected for the exam which he didn't even sit.
Oh, I see.
So you see, that's why people think the computer is making a lot of mistakes.
I see. Right.
So we feel that I think the government should try perhaps 1 year, for 1 year or 2 years, to have these papers hand-marked.
Hand-marked.
Yes. Because I don't see any reason why that cannot be done. Because in my time, we used to have standard 6 papers marked by hand. Teachers were selected and marking boards were formed in each province. And the teachers marked these. And I should say that in those days the papers were very long. They were not like what they are today. Today they are one-word answers, only A, B, A, B. Whereas in those days you had to write, to mark essays, you had to mark geography, they were full scout papers, you had to go through those, geography or history, civics, they were all full scout papers, you had to mark those. Whereas today, from what I see, they are only answers, one-word answers, A, B, right or wrong, yes or no, yes or no. So I think it is possible to mark these by hand, and that will avoid a lot of unnecessary delays and probably a lot of possible errors, because we feel that there are a lot of in the computer there are a lot of errors committed, either in selection or in the marking. There have been cases of where the whole school was just blank, as if everybody has not been selected. And after checking, you find the computer had just skipped to the whole school or two. They've again either to rewrite or they've just to guess the marks for them, or to mark them by hand. I think marking by hand is much better.
Yes. Right. Well, thank you for that final comment.
Thank you.
On our problems of education today. So I can't think of anything else, Mr. Ngalande. So with that, unless you've thought of something very quickly here, then
no,
we'll conclude then.
Well, thank you very much for interviewing me.
Thanks again.